Hey guys, it's Alexis, aka The Sloth Reader, and I'd like to welcome you guys to my April review. Now, if you guys don't know, I do a monthly review at the end of every month where I talk about basically all the non-bookish things that happened in the month. The movies I watched, the television shows I got into, the things I did, that kind of stuff. I really didn't do much in April, mostly because I worked a ton this month. It was just kind of a hectic month for me. And also too, I watched a ton of video game streams this month, so that's a big chunk of what I did. And I'm not going to go into it in here, but I kind of will a little bit later when I talk about something else in the month. But that's pretty much what took up most of my time, was that I just watched a ton of video game streams. So that's pretty much why this is going to be probably a pretty short video, so let's just go ahead and get into it. The first thing I'll talk about is the movies I watched this month. I watched 2 new movies, and then I watched 2 rewatches for me. So I'll go ahead and just go in the order of how I watched them. The first movie I watched in the month of April was Moonlight. This was the movie that won the Oscar for Best Film this year, which, by the way, I absolutely think was totally deserving of. I watched it with my parents because we're all big into the Oscar season, so we all wanted to watch it, but I loved it. I thought it was such a beautiful movie. I thought so many aspects of it was gorgeous. I thought the cinematography was beautiful. I thought the sound editing was really good. The script was really good. The acting was fantastic. There were so many parts in the movie I wanted to cry. Happy tears, tears of frustration, sad tears. I mean, there were, like, you're following this man's life growing up in a poor black neighborhood in Miami, I want to say, in like the 90s, the 80s or 90s when the story takes place. And so you're following him at 3 different points in his life: when he's a kid, when he's a teenager, and then when he's a grown man. And it's kind of just about like all the things going on in his life. It's a queer story. It's about him also dealing with his sexuality while being from a poor black neighborhood in the 80s in Miami. But there was so much of this. I mean, like, my heart was aching through so much of this movie, and I felt like the story, while I could necessarily relate to on many levels, I think is a very relatable story to a lot of people, and I loved it. Like, 10 out of 10. 9.5 out of 10. It was really, really good. I really, really liked it. The next movie I watched was a rewatch for me, and that was an animated movie, and that was The Iron Giant. I haven't watched The Iron Giant since I was a kid, but for some reason in the first half of April I was like, you know, I really want to rewatch The Iron Giant. And The Iron Giant is one of my favorite movies. Like I said, it was one of my favorite movies as a kid. I remember Cartoon Network would play The Iron Giant continuously for like 3 days in a row for like Thanksgiving or something, and I guess I just watched so much of it growing up that I just absolutely adore it. It's so good. Basically, The Iron Giant tells the story of a young boy named Hogarth Hughes who basically finds a giant robot in the woods. And it's basically about him befriending this giant robot and them like teaching each other stuff. So like E.T. but with like a giant robot, basically. Actually, that's a really good explanation for it. It basically is like E.T. but with a giant robot. You guys know I love giant robots, and so evidently that was something I also enjoyed as a kid. Iron Giant is by Brad Bird, who's the guy who also did The Incredibles, which is also one of my favorite movies. It's just a really overall really good story. So much of it is just really heartwarming as you're watching this Vin Diesel voiced robot like learn what it is to be a person. And it's just really beautiful. It's kind of cheesy in some parts. The story itself takes place in like the 50s or 60s, so it has a lot of like Americana themes for that time. But yes, it's a really beautiful story, and if you've never seen it, you should check it out because it's wonderful. The next movie I watched was another rewatch, and it's one of my all-time favorite movies as well, and that is Mad Max Fury Road. I love this movie. I saw this movie like 5 times in theaters when it came out 2-3 years ago. I don't remember, but I love this movie. I love the cinematography in this movie and how they did all of the all of the color cinematography that they did in this movie is phenomenal. I love the acting and the cast. I love how absolutely feminist and awesome this movie is. I think this world is so interesting, and every time I watch it, I'm like, I want to know more. Like, I would read a 7-book series based on the Mad Max Fury Road world. I love that they did like 85% of the stunts in real life out in the desert with a bunch of cars rather than CGIing them. I think that was really awesome. I love the special effects makeup in this movie. I love the costuming in this movie, and overall I just love like everything about this movie. This movie has no flaws in my opinion. I absolutely love it. I adore it. If you're into epic car chase scenes, post-apocalyptic stories, and a story about a bunch of women who are super freaking awesome, I highly recommend checking out Mad Max Fury Road because it's wonderful. The last movie I watched in the month of April was a movie that has taken me far too long to see, and when it first came out I wanted to see it so bad and I just never got a chance to, and so like literally like 2 nights ago I was just laying in my room listening to movie soundtracks, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to rent and watch this movie, and I did. And spoiler alert, I freaking loved it, and that was Disney's Moana. I hadn't seen Moana when it first came out, which was such a disappointment to me because I had wanted to see it so bad, and I loved it. I liked it much better than Brave, and I liked it a lot better than Frozen. Of those 3 more recent princessy type stories, it's my favorite. There's so many things about Moana I really, really loved. I thought the animation was beautiful. I loved the setting of Moana. It has a Polynesian setting to it. And so the characters and the culture and these island and water sceneries just worked so well with the animation. And I mean, honestly, the way that the animation brought these stories and these characters and these cultures to life was gorgeous. There's this one song that The Rock does called You're Welcome, where the animation style shifts a little, and I thought that was brilliant. I loved that. So much of the movie takes place on the water. I loved the water animation. It was gorgeous. There's a scene where it shows sand, and you could literally tell that they had like animated individual grains of sand, and it was just beautiful. Like, I was just so continuously blown away by how gorgeous the animation was. The singing was phenomenal. The music I loved so much. Of course, it was Lin-Manuel Miranda, so no surprise that I thought it was really beautiful. I think her name is, I think it's Aului. I'm sorry, I know I'm butchering that, but it's the girl who did the voice of Moana. She has an amazing voice, and hearing her sing actually gave me chills. She's phenomenal, and I think she really brought the character of Moana to life. I loved The Rock. I love The Rock anyway, but I thought Dwayne Johnson did a fantastic job as Maui, and I loved that this story isn't about a romance. It's about Moana and her journey and her story and her character growth, and I loved it. I think that this is a huge stepping stone in future Disney animations. I can definitely see where this is going to open them up to do so much more. And I think that this is a story that little girls everywhere needed, and I thought it was wonderful. Skipping TV shows and moving right on to the music I mostly listened to this month. The music that I kind of discovered this month and really fell in love with was actually a original soundtrack, and that is the soundtrack to The Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt, which is the 3rd game in the Witcher series, which is kind of like a Polish-inspired fantasy that's actually based on a book series that I'm really interested to read now. I actually discovered The Witcher 3 for the first time this month. I hadn't gotten to play it when it came out 2 years ago, but it won, I mean, a whole plethora of awards. It won Game of the Year from so many different people, but one of my favorite Twitch streamers, Munition, and I'll leave her link down below if you guys are interested to go check her out, but she's been replaying The Witcher as her 2nd playthrough, and I've been watching her play it and thoroughly enjoying watching her stream it. And immediately I fell in love with the music for this game. So much of the music for this game is like medieval inspired, so it's very much, you know, either bard type songs or, you know, very upbeat musical troupe type stuff from the Middle Ages, but I really love it. I love the slow songs. The battle sequence songs are awesome. There's a card game built into The Witcher 3 called Gwent, and the 5 songs that they play for Gwent are amazing. I have actually there was a whole day I just listened to those 5 Gwent songs on repeat for like 4 hours. I love them. I wish I was still in school because that would be my soundtrack to all of my homework and all of my studying, because I immediately went and bought the soundtrack. I'm obsessed with it. I think it's phenomenal. I think this game is also phenomenal. But yeah, I'm really, really obsessed. And I can't play the game myself, so I will have to settle for listening to the stellar soundtrack. The last thing I'm going to mention is an event that I went to this month, and that is I went to a concert on the 7th here in Birmingham to see Panic at the Disco. I made an Instagram post and then I Snapchatted some of the stuff from the concert. So I went and saw Panic at the Disco. I've been a fan of Panic at the Disco, Brendan Urie. I think at the concert he said he's been doing this for 13 years, which means I've been a fan of Panic for 13 years. Which is crazy to me. I mean, from their very first album, which is A Fever You Can't Sweat Out, I've pretty faithfully listened to all of their music. I actually had tickets to see Panic at the Disco last year, but I had to sell it because I had something come up for that weekend, so I couldn't go. And I was like really upset about it, but I was like, you know, Panic's super popular. I was like, Brendan Urie will come close again and I'll get a chance to see him. So I bought tickets this past January to see him this month, and it was such an amazing concert. Brendan Urie is such a wonderful performer. He played so much of the music from Panic over the years. He did like a medley of a bunch of the songs off of A Fever You Can't Sweat Out, which was their first album, which was so much fun to listen to. He just put on such an amazing show, and he was dancing all over the place, and you could tell that after 13 years he still just enjoyed doing this so much. And that makes such a difference when you're paying money to go see somebody. If they're standing up there singing and they don't seem like they're having a good time, you're really not going to have a good time because you're not really feeling their energy. But I mean, Brendan Urie had enough energy for that entire stadium, and you could tell that he still loved to do this. He still loved touring, and that made it so much fun. I'll see if I can find any of the pictures I took. Some of the pictures came out really blurry. He performed This Is Gospel on a piano, and that was really gorgeous. And yeah, it was a really, really phenomenal concert. I had a great time. Alright guys, so that was my April review. Again, these are just all the non-bookish things that I did over the course of April. The movies I watched, the TV I watched, the video games I became obsessed with. But you guys should let me know down below if you guys did anything exciting in the month of April, or if you watched any great movies lately. I'd love to know, and I'll see you guys soon with another video. Bye!